my first boss in plumbing told me, I'm never going to be able to pay you what you're worth. And that always stuck with me because I was about to have my first child and I couldn't find a job working for somebody for more than $16 an hour. Okay, I got to do something different, right? To make more money. I'll have more time. I'll go on vacation all the time. Just like every business owner says before they start their business, right?
You knew that starting a business was a risk and it's one that you were willing to take kind of out of necessity, where it's like, you know, I've got other mouths to feed. I'm kind of at this point where it's like, I know this is what I need to do. What were some of the mindset things that gave you the confidence to actually pull the trigger and do it?
One of the smartest people, richest people that I know years ago told me, always be making money while you're making money. I didn't know failure. Come from nothing. I grew up in a very wealthy neighborhood. I'm just a regular guy, started in my garage, bought a $2,000 van off Craigslist and went to work.
All right. What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another episode of the TradeOps radio podcast. Today, I'm joined by Chuck. Chuck, for people that are just tuning in, give us a quick spiel. Let us know who you are, what you do, and just get us familiar a little bit before we dive into questions.
Yeah, I'm Chuck Staszkiewicz, aka Chuck the Plumber, co-founder of the OG Group or the Opus and Golds Group, and 25 years in the trades and plumber by trade, and been there, done that, walk the walk, talk the talk, you know? So yeah, that's about it.
Right on. So I know part of your story is, you know, you started a family business, plumbing, and eventually grew and sold and exited that. Just go back to starting that particular business. Where were you at in life when you decided to start the business? And kind of just give us the origin story, I guess.
Yeah. I'm just a regular guy, man. Like, I'm just like everybody else. I started out in plumbing because I didn't like school, barely graduated high school, took me 5 years, right? And I started off on a career of doing plumbing when I was 23 years old. And, you know, working for somebody. So my first boss in plumbing told me a long time ago, he goes, as soon as you can, start promoting yourself as you can do side work. He's like, because I'm never going to be able to pay you what you're worth. And that always stuck with me because I treated my employees that way too, right? I was like, you know, look, you're trading, you know, time for dollars. That's hard, right? So I've always believed in building people up, you know. So, and I do believe that was one thing that led to a great success of mine, is always constantly building myself, but also building the people around me that worked for me as well. So, yeah, that's, I mean, 25 years in the trades. It was 2011, just coming out of the recession, right? And I was about to have my first child, and I couldn't find a job working for somebody for more than $16 an hour. So I was kind of forced to say, okay, I got to do something different, right? And again, not having any business knowledge behind me, I'm just like, look, I can go do this for myself and make more money. I'll have more time. I'll go on vacation all the time. Just like every business owner says, you know, before they start their business, right? They think like, oh, it's just going to be great. You're going to, you know, back up the truck and put in millions of dollars into the back of the truck and go to the bank. Well, Little did I know what actually business entailed until I got into it. But again, man, I'm just a regular guy, started in my garage, bought a $2,000 van off Craigslist and went to work.
Sure. So, I mean, that story is not crazy different from a lot of the people that we speak to that are in the trades, where it's like you started as kind of a tech or got into the business somehow, some way, and then eventually, you know, started and did your own thing. One thing, I got two things I want to piggyback off of that a little bit. The first one is you're the second person in a row now that we've talked to that had their old boss or the business that they started working for encourage them to go out and do work on the side. I find that extremely interesting. The last guy that we spoke to was in the HVAC world. Yeah. You know, obviously coming from plumbing, it's not crazy different, but I mean, I come from like the landscaping kind of world. That's my background as far as the trade that got me into all this stuff, and it was never encouraged to go out and do side work. So I think that's really interesting that, you know, there's guys out there that like want their employees to do well, and maybe it's just a byproduct of the industry, or, you know, the people you guys are around in the business, people you're working for. But I find that really interesting, kind of awesome, where it's like, you know, I'm going to keep it real with you. You're never going to get paid what you're really worth unless you go out and do it for yourself, which I think is a lesson that a lot of people can take away from. And then the second piece is like, okay, so you knew that starting a business was a risk and it's one that you were willing to take kind of out of necessity, where it's like, you know, I've got other mouths to feed. I'm kind of at this point where it's like, I know this is what I need to do. What were some of the mindset things that gave you the confidence to actually pull the trigger and do it? Because like you said, it worked out in the end, but obviously you didn't know that that was a guarantee to happen. There's a lot of guys that I talk to that, you know, have obviously started the business, done incredibly well, wouldn't change a thing. And then for every one of those, there's more so that are thinking about doing it, but don't commit and don't pull the trigger and don't get started. So what would you say to some of those people were the things in your brain in that moment that were like, I'm going to do this and it's going to have to just work somehow?
Yeah. So, two parts to that, right? Like, so going back to employees, like I saw the industry and I saw a lot of these companies, saying if you get caught doing side work, you're going to be fired immediately. Right. And
Yeah.
I was like, that's no way to really treat people. Right. Like, so I built a system like this is like, look, you can go out and do the work yourself, but just make sure you're safe. Make sure you're treating people safe. If you get into trouble, lean on me, right? Because let's face it, guys are going to do side work anyways, right?
Yeah.
So whether they do it behind your back or just come to you, I think having them come to you and you be a part of it is better than them sneaking around behind your back, maybe taking parts off the truck, this and that. So I laid the guidelines out. I was like, look, don't take my clients, don't take parts off the truck, but go
Mm.
out and support your family and friends. If you need my discount, use my account, right? Just pay cash for it. But let me know about it so I don't cross-reference and say, hey, maybe you got that client from my database, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and I built a culture around that and it was amazing. So guys appreciated that. And I actually was able to use that as recruiting too, because I told my employees, I was like, look, does your boss allow you to do work on the side? And they were like, no, I'd get fired for that. Well, over here you can, as long as you do this, right? The other
Yeah.
part too is I let them, if they wanted to turn it over to the company, right? I would give them a percentage of the job. So I gave them the choice. They could either handle it themselves or they could turn it over to the company. But I also guided them through that, right? I was like, look,
Mm.
one of the smartest people, richest people that I know years ago told me, always be making money while you're making money. And this was one of those situations where if you turned it over to the company and then you just went to work instead of moonlighting all night long, and then you're too tired to go to work, you're still making a piece of it, but you're also still making money over here. So I guided them. I set up the expectations up front, and I let them. I showed them how they could make money and still serve the client and be protected. And I gave them the choice. It wasn't. I was never a dictator in there,
Mm.
right? To answer the second part of that, I didn't know failure, right? Like I come from nothing. I grew up in a very wealthy neighborhood. My parents worked 3 jobs each so we could go to a good high school, which I failed miserably at. I'm not a school person. I'm very much a trades guy through and through. I'm blue collar. It is in my veins, right?
Mm.
And my parents just wanted me to have the best life that I could have. So like I don't know failure. And for me, failure was like, I'm here, I'm at zero, I can't go any lower. Right. So that was number one. And number two was like, I was about to be a dad. Right. And I couldn't find a job as a licensed plumber with 10 years experience, very good at sales. Like I was consistently out of 14 guys at one company that I worked, I was in the top 4 every month. And not
Mm.
because I sold anything, because I was just really good at what I did. And I provided an excellent experience when I walked into people's homes. So I started to pick these things up as I was working for companies. So I worked for probably 4 or 5 big companies when I was working for other people, and I worked for a couple smaller companies as well. And I say I got the knowledge how to do plumbing from the smaller companies because I was more hands-on. I was right next to the owner. They were teaching me. I got the
Mm.
business knowledge from working at the bigger companies. And those bigger companies showed me what to do, but more importantly, showed me what not to do. And I was
Mm.
constantly looking at, we're talking 23 years ago, I was selling service agreement, right? And I still remember exactly what was on that service agreement because I sold so many of them, right? And so like by having those little things as experience working for these bigger companies, then when I started my company, I knew the direction that I wanted to go in with it as it grew, right? Like when was the time to add service agreements? When was the time to add a call center? what are different systems and processes that they were doing that were working well, what are some that they didn't have in place, and what are some that they had in place that didn't work at all. So I was very good at seeing all this stuff because I'm a very hands-on type of person, but I always kept it in my memory bank of like, your company doing 4, 5, 6, 7 million a year. What were they doing well? What weren't they doing well? And I would carry some of that stuff into my company. Same thing with the employees doing side work, right? Everybody else had this policy that if you got caught doing side work, you'd be fired. Well, that limited the employee pool. Plus, let's face it, they're going to have to fire probably 50% of their employees at some point because they're going to do the shit anyways. So again, recognizing those little differences of what they were doing, even marketing pieces, man. Like I took a marketing piece that I saw my one of my second boss use years ago, where he was giving away a free 40 or 50 gallon water heater with a boiler installation. Well, that was from New Jersey. I moved across the country to Salt Lake City. No one was doing it in Salt Lake City. And I'd remembered that. And it was like 10 years later that I remember that. And I threw that marketing piece off. If you bought an HVAC system, whether it was a furnace or an AC, you got a free 40 or 50 gallon water heater, but I also put a spin on it, or $500 off. So if they just replaced their water heater or it was functioning, they could also just get the money off.
Right. Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's awesome. I mean, I know I pretty much had a very similar experience. A lot of the smaller companies, I get the hands-on, the technical skills. I learn a lot about doing the thing. And then the bigger companies, it was much more about just how is this structured? How do they actually run this business? Who are the people that are kind of a little higher up the food chain, where if I catch them on their lunch break and I can pick their brain for 10 or 20 minutes about like, how is this machine operating? That's where I pulled a lot of that stuff from. And I remember at the bigger ones too, part of our employee agreement was like a non-compete clause, which, maybe we did or didn't honor that. But at the end of the day, it's like, the people are going to do what they're going to do regardless, which is the point of that. And, I think the way that you structured it is not in a way where it takes away from your own business as well. I think what you said is like totally makes sense. Yeah. And it aligns where it's like, there's enough food at the table for everyone to eat, right? I know you guys are going to do this regardless. How about I give you the tools and resources to do it? We both make more money doing it that way. And it also doesn't feel like there's this like elephant in the room that we kind of need to, walk on eggshells around and just like, we all know it's happening. How about we just clear the air and like do it the right way? And everyone makes money and there's no like hard feelings or weird shit going on behind the scenes. So I think that's the way to do it. And I think that that's one problem out of millions that you encounter with any business, even outside of the home services, where it's like the solution is just one, getting real with what's actually happening, and then two, creating a solution where both parties are properly incentivized. If you put the right incentive structures in place, almost anything can be worked out in a way where both people feel like they're winning.
Yeah.
Obviously, depending on the problem, it can be a little trickier to manage than just, hey, we're going to help you get work on the side. But the point stands where it's like, a lot of times just take a step back and think about, okay, what does this person really want? And what do I want? And if there's any way to just bring those two things a little closer together so we both get a piece, we can make it shake and make it happen like that. So
yeah, anything with business, right? Not just that situation, but anything with business. It's not just black and white. There's a lot of gray in between there. Look at the gray areas, right? That's where I got really good at it and why I scaled from 0 to 22 million with 130 employees in 12 years and sold to PE. Like I was very good at seeing the gray area and creating a win-win for everybody in the situation.
Yeah. On that note too, with the gray areas and stuff, like there's not necessarily rules either. Like if you asked anybody, should I let my employees do work on the side? They would say, no, that doesn't make any sense. Why would you do that? But then again, it's like rules are meant to be broken. And sometimes the actual solution is to like do the counterintuitive thing at times, which again, that is seeing the gray where it's like, hey, there's this thing. Common sense maybe tells me to not do this, but at the same time, if everyone's treating it that way, we're not going to end up any different than they did. So let's think outside the box here and be creative with how we solve it. And there really is no right or wrong way. It's about solving it as an individual with your situation. So
Yeah. I'll
yeah.
give you another example of how I thought in the gray, right? I saw the on-call schedule. We were 24/7. My company was called All Hours Plumbing, 24/7, 365 days a year. I saw the on-call schedule, and guys were on call for a week at a time, right?
Mm,
So that meant you had to work your 40, 50, 60 hours a week, plus go out late at night on calls. And I did this for a lot of years. I spent 15, 16 years on call myself. I love that shit. Like I can work 150 hours a week, no problem.
yeah.
But I realized not everybody was built like me. Otherwise they'd own their own company, right? So I was like, okay, how do I solve this problem? How do I think in the gray? Well, it was really easy. I then tiered it that it was you were on call one night a week and 1 weekend a month. Now I get it. Sometimes if you only have 2 employees, that's not feasible, but you can still figure it out, right? There's still a gray area there. So
Mm,
when you were on call on your weekend, you had the choice to either take Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday off. You could have both days, or you could have one, make a little extra money, or you could work straight through. I leave it up to them. I didn't force them to be on call for a week, be away from their family, burn out. So then during the day, they weren't serving the clients well. They weren't happy at work and ultimately would lead them to leaving because they were burnt out. So
mm,
again, by thinking in that gray, I solved a major problem. And guess what happened? I started to recruit people and they were coming over because our on-call schedule was so lenient. The whole industry had to change around me.
mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm hearing some of the stuff that you're talking about, and it's pretty common for guys that run businesses in the trades to say that one of their biggest struggles is just recruiting and getting labor on board.
Yep.
And everything that you've said so far, it's like, here you are as the business owner, literally laying out step by step your thought process. And it's always about like what works best for my employee, not me. Like there's a way to
Yep.
make it work for me too. But at the end of the day, it's like creating a situation where the employee gets, you know, you can debate that, but like the employee gets the longer end of the stick, the better end of the deal. And as a business owner, like maybe you should operate like that and consider that and think about that, because like if recruiting is a problem, if you don't have people coming to you wanting to work for you, that creates a little bit of strain on how fast or what you can do with scaling the business. And I think that what you're talking about is not that different. I have always kind of seen it as the same process where it's like, as a business, the same way that you go out and you do marketing and then you attract customers, and then the best customers that you ever get are the word of mouth referrals from those other customers. The same exact process applies to recruiting. You are doing marketing and you are doing sales and you are attracting and closing clients, employees for the business. And then the best employees you're ever going to get are the ones that come to you off of word of mouth and referrals. So it's like the same thing, client facing versus internally with employees. Like if you can apply that mindset, you'll do just fine. And I think a lot of the stuff you just said, apply it. If you're listening to this from other industries, take this situation and just, apply it to the relevant thing in your world. But yeah, I think a lot of the stuff that you're saying is like the cheat code, the unlock for a lot of guys for, being able to attract and retain employees, which is
Yeah.
very commonly the biggest concern or bottleneck for a lot of people out there. So
Yeah, for sure.
that's dope. Um, what would you say are some of the biggest issues or like roadblocks that you had to overcome with scaling the business? And if you can, tying them to specific revenue ranges.
Yeah. So I treat it like this, like there's levels. There's 0 to 1 million,
Yep.
million to 3, 3 to 5, 5 to 7, 7 to 10, 10 to 12, 12 to 15, 15 to 20, 20 and above, right? And there's different hurdles all along that. Now, look,
Mm-hmm.
man, I'm not gonna say that I did it all perfect. I spent 9 years in a truck, right?
Mm-hmm.
I ran my business just like most business owners do, mom and pops, startups. I was looking at the bank account. It was going up. I'm doing good. It was coming down. I was freaking out, right?
Yeah.
I call myself the Tom Brady of home services because every time I threw the ball, it was being caught. I don't
Mm.
want to say I was lucky, but I was really good at guessing at what I needed to do next. And that is like one of the biggest roadblocks. For 9 years, I ran it like that. And it was, I mean, man, talk about burnout, talk about energy, talk about wanting to distract myself with anything that would come my way that wasn't the business. I did that, and
Yeah.
it's a huge problem. So I would say like really sitting down and formalizing a plan of the direction. Where do you want the business to go? Where do you want to be in 3 years, 5 years? Right? What level are you at today? Are you 0 to 1, 1 to 3, 3 to 5? What level are you at? And what are the strategies that you need to put in place to go to the next level? Right? So what I mean by that is like when I was doing 12 million, I had an org chart, an organization chart of who was in working in the company and what their roles were. But I wasn't just running off a $12 million org chart. I was also simultaneously, I built out a $15 million a year org chart because that's the direction that I wanted to go. That's where I wanted to be. So I was looking at both, right? 12 is where I'm at, 15 is where I want to go, right? So I need to, the $15 million org chart is going to be a lot heavily expanded, right? There's going to be different positions in there. There's going to be more trucks. There's going to be more, different systems and processes, all those types of things, right? So I need to focus on kind of both, right? So my
Mm.
next hiring move, my next buying of equipment move was all based on the direction that I want to go, right? So if you're at 1 and you want to go to 3, you have to have a plan to get to 1, or if you've already got there, you have to have that solid plan or you've already built it out, right? And you got there. Now it's the direction that I want to go. 3. Okay, I need to do this, 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 and this, and limit the distractions behind it. Now you're going to have the fires. Look, when you're under 5 million, you don't have a lot of help, right? Like you're doing a lot of the stuff yourself. You're the visionary, you're the implementer. I was taking calls while I was out in the middle of working on things for clients, like all that stuff. But here's the thing that is fantastic about now versus when I started in 2008. Now we have all this technology that can help speed that process up. So what I did in 12 years, and look, I'm not going to put it down. 0 to 20 million in 12 years is a big company, but now I'm watching guys do it in half the time.
Mm.
I know a guy that built a company from 0 to 17.5 million in 4.5 years and sold it because technology is behind him, right? So like, if I was growing the company right now, if I go back and I was only doing $10 million or $3 million in revenue, I'd be looking at a lot of AI stuff structure to put in place. Look, I was answering phone calls while I'm driving around or working on something in a house. Now you have this AI system that can pretty much sound like a human, and it's going to continue to get better and better. But I look at it not just for that, like if I don't have the ability to hire somebody, but I also, me doing, 22 million a year, I had 35 people in the office. Now I look at that and I'm like, oh my gosh, what kind of labor burden was that on my company?
Yeah.
And with technology, I probably could have added 30 or 40% to my bottom line by shifting roles. Now, I have a heart. I love my people. We talked about
Mm.
employees early on. I'm always finding a win-win situation. I'm not saying if you're doing $10 million a year right now, you go out and fire everybody and replace them with AI. No, you take the people that have the willingness and the drive, and you create a situation for them that now they can be more client facing, and you find a position for them where they can go out and produce revenue. Now you have AI taking care of the stuff that they were doing, right? Or technology taking care of the stuff that they were doing. Now they're
Mm.
going out and driving revenue. Whether that's they're good at filming and they're really awesome with Facebook and they're just doing your social media campaigns, right? Or they're going out and doing door hangers or door knocking for you, right? Like I don't know about you, but I know a CSR that can handle 100 phone calls a day. If they went around and door knocked for me, I could set them up with
Yeah.
an awesome flyer and do a door knocking campaign that'll knock people's socks off, right? Because they're used to talking to people. So don't just get rid of people. Figure out how to utilize them in your company to create and generate more revenue and scale.
Yeah, totally agree with that. I think as someone who is kind of a part of the process of figuring out those tools and helping people implement them, I would 100% agree where right now, currently where things stand, AI is not good enough to fire everybody and just plug in a chatbot or a robot to handle everything. But what it will do is take your top 20% of performers and allow them the resources and the productivity to replace the bottom 80%.
Yeah, man.
Right. So what you just said makes complete sense where it's like, hey, how about we just take the people that are already rock stars and let them go nuts? Like give them more opportunity. How do we leverage this to like accelerate and get them to produce more than they already have been?
Yeah.
Or, in the social media, like camera filming example, like give them other lanes that still help the business that, they were tied down doing some like manual or like repetitive kind of tasks for the business. Now that we can free up some of that time for them, like what are other areas that they can deliver on as well? So
Yeah.
that's 100% checks out for sure. Just to like retrace a little bit, you answered a lot of the question, but if there's any more specifics that we can get about the different revenue levels and like the challenges that are present at those ones, specifically about building out the org chart, I want to, if we can narrow in on that a little bit. First of all, there's probably some people watching this that have no idea what that is or haven't heard of it, maybe haven't gotten to a point where that's necessary. But I think that, like you said, seeing things as like the quarterback is the piece of the business mindset that a lot of the guys maybe sub $1 million or at that kind of point where it's like it starts to be a lot bigger than just you, or segmenting and dividing out responsibility around decision making. Because like you said, the 1 to 5, almost everything is getting filtered through you still as like the keystone of the business.
Yeah.
How do you kind of go about organizing or just getting to a point where you can even visualize what that org chart looks like and being like, okay, I get it. Here's the different pieces. Now I just need to put people in that and like go about actually building it, execute on.
Yeah, real simple, guys. I'll tell you just like this, how I would do it if I didn't have the knowledge that I have. I would go on ChatGPT or Claude or Manus or whatever, and I'd say, I'm an electrical company doing $2 million a year. Build me an organizational chart for my size. That's going to give you the outline. Now you go in and fill in the blanks, right? And you could do that for any size. I would also say, I want to, and be realistic. Like, don't think that you're going to go from $1 million to 20 million in 1 year. It's possible, but it's gonna take a lot, right? So build out that next org chart too, and get yourself an outline, right? Like, so use technology to get yourself the outline. If you want to, book a strategy call with me, right? I'll help you build that out. Now, I'm going to go back and simplify and answer a little bit more of that question that you asked about, the different levels and scaling. Look, if you're sub 3 million, sometimes all you have to do is just focus on going out and selling stuff and delivering an exceptional product and value for people. Don't overcomplicate the shit out of it, right? Like nowadays, people are so distracted. There's so many shiny objects. I need this shiny CRM. It's going to make me a $10 million. No, stop, right? I got to $12 million top line revenue by simply being a plumber. Okay. I didn't have anything else in place. I went out, I sold stuff, I delivered, I created an experience and an amazing value for my clients, and the word spread. Now, I had marketing pieces in there, I had other things in there and all that stuff, but don't overcomplicate it. Sometimes that's all you need to do. I think beyond that, you should be tracking profitability and your numbers, right? So sub 3 million, go out, sell stuff, deliver the product, track your profit, and literally make sure that you're priced correctly. If you're not consistently 4 or 5 times a year looking at how your pricing is, especially right now with everything, inflation, all that stuff, like, do that. If you're not raising your prices every time your vendors raise your price, you're gonna eat it, right? So, and I didn't do that for a lot of years. I stuck at one price. I figured I got to be the cheapest so I win jobs. No, man. You figure
Mm,
that out, you figured out more than half the battle. The rest of the stuff is just putting in the intricate pieces. How do I increase marketing? How do I bring on salespeople? How do I, um, buy more trucks and finance things? And how do I make sure I don't get sued and I have the proper insurance and all that stuff? Again,
mm,
it will start with that org chart, right? So if you're at a million, you want to get to 3, you're going to have maybe a salesperson in there, maybe a service manager in there, maybe maybe there's a door knocking campaign person in there, right? Like salesperson. So the org chart will help you figure out where to throw the football.
mm. Sure. Right on. Um, what were some of the things that made you decide to sell?
Mm, good question. So I didn't start the company. Again, I've explained a lot of that. I was a plumber turned businessman, right? So I didn't start the company to sell it. I had no idea that was the direction that I was going to go in when it happened. Couple things happened that led to it was COVID. COVID definitely. I mean, if you had a business during COVID, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There was lots of things going on during that time, right? And it was
Mm,
actually the first time in my career that I was scared. I was nervous. I was like, "What the heck is going to happen?" Right? And it was actually what I needed as a wake-up call. I needed to humble myself, right? Because, I mean, I'm sure there's a time when Tom Brady steps on the field and he's like, "Nobody can stop me," right? I was kind of experiencing that for myself because everything I was throwing was getting caught and it was turning into a touchdown. So when
mm,
COVID happened, it knocked me down. Now I was that starting quarterback that was sitting on the bench again. And I had to realize what I didn't know. And it took an experience or an event like COVID to knock me down. And I got into a room with my first mentor, and I realized, man, I don't know anything. And I became a sponge. I was like, I just want to learn as much as I can. And I worked with that mentor for several years after
mm,
that, 5 years after that. And I became a sponge. And then I realized I'm like, I've just been doing business. I've just been grinding. I've been outworking everybody. I haven't really expanded myself and expanded my knowledge. So again, being that sponge, I did books and podcasts and I hired a mentor, and then I hired a second mentor, and then I hired a third mentor, right? Like I became just I wanted to know and learn as much as I possibly could because I realized how long I hadn't been learning.
mm. When you say COVID was kind of like an oh shit moment or a difficult year or the first time where you felt like there was like downwards pressure on what you were trying to build, is there a single moment or a single thing that happened? Like I'm really trying to pinpoint like what was the thing about that time that
Yep.
made you realize that stuff? Like I need to learn more. I'm not doing this. Like there's more to be understood here.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, a bunch of things happened during that time, but COVID was the one that was just like, oh shit, we got to do something different. So I met with my sister, who I hired as my general manager, February of 2020. March, we were all shut down, or people were shut down, right? So I met with her on a Thursday. I remember when they were announcing that they were going to shut everything down. And I said, we got to shift big time. So we went through and said, okay, where are we spending that we don't have to spend? What employees do we have that we don't really need? And we devised a plan of we're gonna triple down on marketing, and we're gonna hire a coach. We're gonna hire a mentor, right?
Mm,
Because we didn't know what we didn't know. And by doing that, we had a solid plan. So we cut expenses that were unnecessary. We looked at employees, and I laid 5 people off. It was the first time in 9 years that I ever laid anybody off. The first one was my father, right? He was retired and working part-time for me. So, he had to go, right? He was not really producing anything. So we laid 5 people off, first time ever. And the second one was we had 2 in-house mechanics working on our trucks. We didn't need 2. We could get away with 1. So we evaluated all that. Um, so, it was just an eye opener. It was like almost a panic eye opener, right? It was like, we can't, like, no one in their right mind heard about COVID and what they were going to do and said, I'm going to just continue doing what I was doing. right?
Yeah.
It opened everybody's eyes. But for me, it was like, I had 75 employees. I wasn't just worried about me. I was worried about them. How are they going to pay for their family, all that stuff. So I immediately went to work. And you asked me why I eventually sold. Well, I got hit with a class action lawsuit. And this is another big thing. As you're building your business, make sure you're doing risk assessments on how much risk you have out there, right? And now, like, that doesn't mean, do I have insurance or don't I have insurance, right? Because this was a class action lawsuit. There's no LLC, there's no corporation, there's nothing of that's going to protect you. You're personally liable for this, right? And I realized that when going through this. So that led to me thinking, all right, I need to de-risk myself even more. And I knew that the industry, plumbing, HVAC was hot. So I explored my options. And once it was really interesting. So 2 years before I sold, I got an evaluation on how much I was worth. And when they told me, I was doing, at that time, I was doing about 14 or 15 million in revenue. Just acquired another business tucked in. And they told me what I was worth. And I was like, are you kidding me? That wouldn't even pay my debt. So I built this, had all this stress, had all these things going on, the risks of the lawsuit, all that. And literally at the end of the day, I had nothing. And I was like, why? Right. So again, another eye opener, just like COVID. And so by having that assessment on what my business was worth today, I knew the number that I wanted to sell for. Right. So knowing where I was at and knowing where I wanted to go. So now I had to figure out where I want to go. What are the things that I need to put in place to get to that number? And literally we drew out a plan and a roadmap of like, okay, we have to have systems and processes in place. We have to have, uh, 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 um, a marketing plan in place. We have to have an analysis. We have to have a hiring process. We have to have an onboarding process. We have to have an org chart distinctively to all the managers in place and what their roles are. I have to have KPIs and scorecards for all my people. And I can't be the bottleneck in the business. If I'm going to sell, half of the value is the fact that I was running the business every day. They don't want to buy me. They want to buy a business that runs itself. So that was one of the biggest shifts that I had to make, was removing myself from the business. So the last year, 2023, we sold in August of 2023. I took 152 days off that year. So when we went to sell, they started asking me questions. I was like, I don't know. Ask this person. That's their department, right? And that's what they wanted to see. So
it was the right answer.
More of a value.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right on. The lawsuit thing, is that something we can go deeper into as far as like what it was about and stuff? Mainly just in the interest of like preventing someone who might have something similar going on to avoid it.
Yes. So those ringless voicemails you get, like your car warranty's expired?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So like you'll go into your phone and you have a message, but your phone never rang. So I did it. It was called Voice Shot, right? I did one to my existing clients. And this was during when PlayStation 5 came out. I ran a campaign of like the first 50 people that got a tune-up on their system, they'd be entered to win. We were going to give away 5 PlayStations. Well, it violated some TCPA guideline. It has to do with robocalling, right? From the 80s. I violated it, and some scumbag attorney got wind of it. My existing client teamed up with this attorney, and they formed this class action lawsuit. I mean, long story short, I actually was in the lawsuit when I transacted. They didn't care because it was a stock sale versus an asset sale. Anyways, long story short, but it really opened my eyes, and it was another one of those pivotal moments. I stood in my driveway with my partner at the time, and I was like, yo, I'm done. Like, again, knowing where my risks were, right? Of like, I'm just going to hang this up. I'm not I don't want to go forward anymore. Like, at the end of the day, what we owed, like, we settled the lawsuit. We didn't win, we didn't lose, we settled, which most do anyways, right? But I owed that money the very next day. Now, if
Yeah.
I wouldn't have sold the business, um, I would have had to scale back. I probably would have been in a truck. Lots of things would have changed. So, you know, how I look at it now, and I do own companies myself now, and I have equity in companies. How I look at it now is, how often are you assessing the risk that you have? We all have risk every single day if we're in business. How
Mm.
often are you assessing how prepared you are? Right now, could I have prevented that? I don't know, man. I don't think I could have prevented that. But when I went to the company that I hired to do the voice shot, and I said, "Hey, I'm being sued. What are you guys gonna do about it?" And they said, "Nothing. You should have read the fine print." Well, right there, I could have done something about it. Read contracts better and understand the risk that I inherit by working with a vendor.
Mm. It was something along the lines of like, "Hey, we're gonna do whatever offer, whatever campaign. We're responsible for sending the messages. Any repercussions is like full. You're fully responsible for holding the hot potato of whatever potential thing happens as a result of sending this
Well,
stuff." Or
Well, that's a lesson learned in contracts, right? How many times are we just going fast? We just sign something. Now,
mm,
there may be something in that contract that is a loophole if it does fall back on them that gets them out of it. That was exactly what was in that. So, a real easy thing that I do now is any contract that comes over to me, I take it, upload it into ChatGPT, and say, find the loopholes for me and tell me where my risks are, right?
yeah,
Trying to go faster. Like, no, I don't like to sit down and read contracts, but ChatGPT is designed for that stuff where they can say, hey, look, you may have risk by doing this, right? Like, very, very easy strategy.
mm. Yeah, 100%, and it's cheaper than sending it to a lawyer for sure, and you get your answer right away.
100%.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, yeah, just to touch on that a little bit, uh, as someone that does a lot of like marketing campaigns and helps with stuff like that, be aware of some of the things you're just talking about, like with phone numbers, with texting, emailing. When it comes to marketing, if you're doing communication to customers via SMS, email, stuff like that, there are some things to be aware of that you can't violate some of that stuff. And it is like kind of, I don't want to say it's dumb. I think it is personally, like, because there's a lot of people that are absolutely abusing the ability to send text messages to people. But like the average plumber or electrician, dude, like they're not thinking about that. Like, and their customer list might be 1,000 people or less. So it's like, these laws are designed to prevent huge corporations or people that are illegally obtaining customer data and information and doing some kind of scam or extortion or phishing or whatever. Like people that wrongfully obtain client contact information and then send them things that are less than legitimate offers. Um, that stuff, those rules and laws exist to prevent that from happening, but it typically means that there's a lot of hoops to jump through for regular everyday business owners that want to use it for the right reasons. So
100%.
just something to be mindful of. You're one of the first people I've talked to that really mentioned risk, and just thinking about the ways that you might actually be exposed as a business owner and like the lawsuit thing. Like, dude, that's a left field thing that happens where it's like, as a plumber, dude, you're not expecting in a million. That is something that's so off the radar that it's like, wow, that is a curveball. So is there any other things that you can think of? Or like when you say assess the risk that you're exposed to right now, for me, the obvious ones are like cash flow and like payroll issues, debt being a piece of that as well. What are some other like maybe less obvious things that I should be thinking about if I'm a business owner of equal or maybe even slightly less than size, where it's like it doesn't seem like this is a threat or something that could potentially, do harm to the business, but you should at least be aware that the possibility exists.
Yeah, I try to always look, what's going on in the world too, right? Like every day something might happen where I may need to assess something. And you're 100% correct. Like this law, this TCPA guidelines law was for big corporations. And like, I mean, when I got hit with it, it was a $3.4 million lawsuit. I was like, what?
Yeah.
You see it in these big corporations all the time. So, some of the other ones that you can assess is like, if you've got employees driving,
Mm,
that's a big one, right? Like, make sure you have the proper insurances. Insurance is a huge one, right? Don't just look at, am I saving money? Look at it as, do I have the proper protection in place? Like, I don't care. Insurance is one of those things. We all hate it until we need it, right?
Mm,
Now, I found this out after I got into this lawsuit. If I would have had this $15 a month coverage, it might have kicked in and helped me pay for that. No one, but
that's tough.
no one thinks about that. Those
Yeah,
corporations have that protection, but the
of
plumber
course.
doesn't, right? So, like,
Yeah.
look at your insurance. If you've got to pay a little bit more, and I get it, it's expensive, but I would rather pay a little bit more and have the proper coverage because let's face it, like, if you have employees working in people's homes or out there driving, like, you're going to need it someday, right? So assess that and make sure at least once a year you're sitting down with your insurance agent and asking, do I need more? Can I shift some things around? Where can I
Mm,
make some cost savings, right? If you do a driver's education program for your people, that'll reduce some things. So there are benefits to having the proper protection and there are ways to reduce it. So that's a real easy one that we all overlook tremendously. My mother-in-law's insurance, she was my agent, so I learned this stuff along the way. But there's nothing worse than having, too little of insurance. Something happens, you go to use it, and then you still owe $200,000 on top of it. And then,
mhm,
like, look at all the other things too. Like, so if you have employees in, people's homes, what protection do you have there? Or working around someone's homes, are you protected correctly? I had an insurance because I'm from New Jersey. I curse a lot. I've got a lot of energy. I had insurance that covered me if employees felt threatened by my energy and whatnot, right? And that
mm,
was something that we had to look into to get. So if I cursed and somebody felt threatened by it, I had an insurance that covered me, right? So, like, I mean, I could go down a whole list, but the thing is not to worry and not to be in fear the whole time, but just to sit down and go, okay, I'm working at this, let's say you take a bigger project on. Do I have the proper insurance to cover if that bigger project, right? And then just look at the broad picture. Do a risk assessment twice a year on your company. If something happened or something has happened and it worked out for me, but if that happens again, am I protected? And what protections do I have there? And what are the things that I have to put in place that if this does happen, we do this, but also to try to prevent those things. Like,
mm.
immediately after we left that voicemail, I'm like, okay, we need to assess everything we're doing in marketing to make sure we're following guidelines.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. And the insurance thing, like, it feels expensive until it's the best money you ever spent.
100%.
Yeah. And one thing that just made me kind of like, what's a decision matrix, or like what's a mindset thing that I can think about where, I mean, you talked about, having insurance where employees, in case they feel threatened by something you do or say, it's like, that's one of those, like, such a specific thing that you don't think about. So it's like, when you were like, yeah, we got a $1 million plus lawsuit for sending text to clients, and then we also have to carry insurance for, you know, people being offended by words I say that work at our, like, those two things give you enough ammo to realize how just random it feels like things can happen. So as a business owner, if you just listen to that, you might be like paranoid level, like, where it's like, there's so many things I now need to think about, where it's like, okay, yes, but, generally, like, what are some things you could anticipate or think of? When you said we have people going in and out of, homes, I was thinking, like, okay, there's a couple of things you might want to think of there, is like, one, how do we get things to protect the employees, which maybe not many people think. The obvious one is, hey, if our employee does damage or, F something up at a customer's property, obviously there's a liability there. But, on the flip side, are you thinking about the employees too? Like, what happens if something happens to one of our guys at a customer's house? Like, how do we handle that? Or just, there's so many variations and stuff. But another thing that I do know is that insurance companies have a disgusting amount of data. And based off of your employee numbers, like size and what industry you're in, they might, like you said, sit down once or twice a year with, your agent and be like, based off of what you know about businesses exactly like ours at our size, what are the most at-risk things for? And even if you just start there as like how do we treat this problem? That might be.
I'll give you one more easy one. If you're running subcontractors, that is a huge risk. You need to make sure that they are properly insured and they're doing the right things, because you're not only at risk yourself, they're at risk, the whole 9 yards, right? So you have to protect yourself and make sure you have the proper coverage for subcontractors or 1099s, but you also have to make sure that they have the proper coverage to work in your people's houses and so on and so forth. Because again, insurance is a risk in itself. Having insurance is a risk, because now once you need the insurance, now they decide whether or not it's suitable for them to pay, and if you
Yeah.
followed the guidelines correctly, right? So another quick easy one to assess.
Yeah, absolutely. And not saying that, insurance companies are bad, but, their
Not at all.
business is to collect money and ideally not have to pay it out. And so when it comes to contracts, terms and conditions, making sure that the exact specific scenario that you're in, they will run it through whatever paperwork you signed at the beginning. And if it's not covered, it's not covered, and you're kind of SOL on that. So
Yeah.
making sure that you, like you said, your bases are covered and the things that you really want to make sure are taken care of are taken care of. Um, when it comes to actually selling the business, you talked about like removing key man risk, right? Like making sure you as the owner are not a bottleneck or a restraint or, a major decision maker, or, basically can the business operate and run without you being involved in the day to day is one thing that anyone that wants to acquire a business is going to be looking at and will greatly add to or subtract from the value of it.
Yes.
What are some of the other things that you kind of worked on or maybe had to change or develop as you were kind of anticipating getting closer to a sale?
Um, wow, that's a deep question, but a very good one. Definitely the training aspect, right? Like, so I was before I sold the business, I was looking for a 10,000 square foot building, so I was going to build out a training facility to train my people in. So, because I figured I could take green people, bring them into a classroom setting, get them out on the road faster. That was a big one. The hiring process is fantastic. But I'll be honest with you, like your website, phone number, your brand, your repetition, those are huge. I mean, my website
Mm,
alone commanded a couple $1 million. And I always thought like I was just pumping money to SEO and digital marketing and updating my website for 30 or 40 grand every year, 2, 3 years. And I was never going to get a return, but that was the return right there. So your brand,
sure.
are you a household name? Right? Like, do people do you stick out, right? And that was huge, right? So we had to go in and paint all the whole picture, how the company started, what the vision was, and then projections. Like you got to project out what you're going to do. So we had a 5-year marketing plan. Like we weren't doing TV, radio, and billboards. We had that where we were structuring where we're going to drop it in place, where what those concepts were. So we got paid on future projections as well. That's something that you don't really see too often during transactions. The other thing
Mm,
is too, and this may be a little bit deeper than most people, but if you're getting close to, intellectual property, right? Like so you can set up companies inside your company that own rights to, like, for instance, if I created a drain cleaning technology, right? I would own the intellectual property to that. So then the person buying you would either have to lease that from you or purchase that company itself too, right?
yeah.
The other thing is buildings and real estate. Typically, anybody especially private equity money, they don't want to buy your buildings and real estate. So you have to structure. Now, most people are going to they're not going to pay themselves extraordinary rent, right? They're trying to reduce their expenses. That's why they buy the building. But setting up a LLC that owns the building and you pay the building a a fair value rent is super important, because they want to see a rolling 12 of that. So 12 months of how much you've paid. So at
Mm,
first we were paying $5,000 a month for a 19,000 square foot building. So I had to double or triple that and show 12 months of that going into the LLC. So when they bought the company, they were now buying or paying that as their rent, right?
Yeah.
The other thing too that people really don't realize, and this can happen from day one. If you started your business today, or if you've been in business for 30 years, every time that you are doing, a write-off or buying something through the company that's personal, number one, track it. Number two, you may want to consider not doing that. Every time you do that, because you're saving on taxes, you're devaluing your business. So every dollar that doesn't run through your business is money that they can take off. And they look at everything. So they went back 3 years. If you're taking cash in your business, you have to show that in a chart of accounts, or they will not give you credit for that. So when you talk about EBITDA, right? What you pay yourself as a salary, what you're paying your key level people as a salary, you have to explain all that stuff too, right? And you don't want to pay yourself $60,000 a year when you should be paying yourself $200,000 a year, because that's considered an add back. Whatever you're paying yourself can be added back. So pay yourself what you're worth, right? Again, that does devalue your business too if you're taking such a low salary. So some of the biggest things that I learned after I sold, I mean, I left a lot of money on the table, man, because I didn't know these things, right? But doing proper tax strategy, no trades guys are out there thinking, I need to plan out how I'm going to save taxes. No, they're just like, well, I'll go buy extra dinners and plan a trip this year, and I'll pay through the business, and that'll save me on my taxes. Well, yes, it is, but you're devaluing your business. There are other strategies, very simple, that you can put in there. And if you're not, if you're working with a CPA, which most of you are, they're great at preparing taxes. They take your information and they just they put it in the boxes that it needs to, and they give it to the IRS. Well, that's not tax strategy. And you going out buying dinners and going on vacation on the company's dime is not tax strategy either. There are a lot of things that you can put in place, and you're losing a lot of money by not doing it. So what I tell you is this: probably around August, September, you should be starting to plan how you do that. And don't just go and buy a whole bunch of stuff at the end of the year because you're worried that you're going to pay Uncle Sam. That, again, is devaluating your business. Now you're left with all this stuff that you have to sell too, right? So that's a big one for me.
What you just said, dude, there's some freaking gems in there. The first one being the rent and the intellectual property. That's some high level shit that I haven't really heard people talk about in the trades. That's, if you don't do more research, that is what you just said there is a fucking banger, dude. When it comes to the tax strategy, I think more people realize okay, if I declare or if I write off less, the income of the business is higher. So that means yes, I'm going to get valued higher. Declaring the cash was a big one too. One thing that I want a little bit more clarity on is the owner's salary. So how does paying yourself less or more impact the valuation of the business? And as you get closer, does it make more sense to pay yourself more to show higher owner salary, or do you kind of want to pay yourself a little bit less, or find market average and just stick around there? What's the pros and cons of doing either one?
So if you pay yourself less, they're going to go in and be like, look, this is not what a CEO should be paid in this. So they're going to increase it. But no matter what, it's going to be an add back, right? If you're paying yourself less to make the business look better, they're going to look at that and say, well, the business isn't doing as good as it is because you're not paying yourself. But but realistically, it depends on how you're set up S Corp or LLC too. So if you take it as a personal, right, you should pay less taxes on it than business tax. So that's one way to do it. But I see a lot of owners that pay themselves less and just write everything off in the company, but they're not tracking that. So you're really not paying yourself, because if you didn't track it correctly, you can't add it back when you sell. So that's the real big difference. So if I paid myself $60,000 a year, but I wrote off $200,000 in the business and I didn't track it, they're not going to give me credit for that. If I pay myself $260,000 a year, I will actually get that back. They say, oh yeah, that's a proper range for a CEO of a company this size. We can add that back.
Gotcha. So the higher owner salary can actually be looked at as like a health signal of the business overall. If
Correct.
they can afford to pay the CEO this, like, you know, there's less room for fudging there than if we just pay less and then write off a bunch of stuff. Now we have to get into the weeds and really prove and have receipts for all that. That makes sense.
Yep.
I think another big thing that I kind of took away from that is like, yeah, dude, we're going back 3 years. So I think there's some guys that wake up and they're just like, yeah, I want to sell my business. Fuck it. And it's like, dude, if you don't have a plan, you are certainly not going to get what it's worth. And I think the 3 years thing is like, I would look at that as sort of the bare minimum, where it's like, if you have the idea, start now and then look at that projection as a couple of years out. These are all the things, and start meeting with the people like you're talking about. Get the insurance guy, get the CPA, get the strategist, because they're different, and like, you know, maybe some coaching, mentoring, talk to brokers, talk to people who have been through the process, and, you know, like yourself, who's, yeah, after the sale I realized all these things and, you know, I could have made way more money. It's like, yeah, figure out where your blind spots are and where there's cash on the table that like you don't even know is there. That's because it'll be worth it for sure. You can only sell it once, and it took whatever 10, 20 years to build, however long. So
Yep.
it's like, you might as well get the most juice out of the squeeze if that's what you're going to do. So
Look, I say this all the time to people, and every time I say it, it blows someone's mind. And it's literally this: you're going to exit your business one day. It's going to be
yeah,
one of three ways. Either you're going to sell it, you're going to leave it to family, or you're not going to be here anymore. So
yeah,
why not run your business today like you're going to exit it? If you run like the 2 years we were prepping to go to market was the best my business ever ran, right?
mm,
So if you're preparing that tomorrow you're going to go to market, your business is going to be run like a well-oiled machine, right? So and again, having that evaluation, knowing where your business, I've looked at hundreds of businesses since I sold mine to buy. And I can tell you the one thing in common is everybody thinks their business is worth more than it is. I was
sure,
one of those people until I had an evaluation from a broker telling me exactly what it was worth, and I was shocked. You know, I didn't have a baseline. So you have to have a baseline and where you want to go. Like, let's call it an easy, I want $10 million for my business. Okay. Your business is only worth $2 million today. Okay. I got to bridge that gap of $8 million. What are the things do I have to have in place to bridge that gap? It sounds so simple when you put it like that. It's not, but you have to know. You have to know exactly where you are at, because when you go into the due diligence process, they're going to do everything they can to knock that number down lower and lower and lower, right? And
yeah,
you know, this is one of my passions and why I started the Opus and Golds group is I want to help business owners educate themselves, right? Because if I would have just went with the first guy, I would have left a whole lot of money on the table. So I asked a lot of questions. I was working with a mentor myself, and I was able to decipher through what the direction was that I wanted to go in. And I see this very often right now is businesses that are selling, they are not doing, they're getting screwed over, right? Because they haven't educated themselves. Here's what,
mm,
if I'm a PE firm, here's what I'm looking for, and I might get in trouble for saying this. I'm looking for a guy that's uneducated, that doesn't know the process of going through selling a business, and doesn't have a broker in place. Why? Because I can get that as a discount.
yeah,
Okay. Now, and it's happening every single day, multiple times a day. Look, I come to you when you're pissed off. There's days I would have sold my business for $1. Here, just
yeah,
take this.
yeah,
Right?
for
But
sure.
and these PE firms are out there doing it, man. They
Oh
are
yeah,
out there saying, "Okay, we'll put the email in front of them. We'll send them
yeah,
a certified letter. We'll tease them that, hey, if you're ever interested in selling your business, come talk to us." Well, when
sure,
you have a bad fucking day, that's going to be when you're going to call them, right?
yeah,
Now you're unrepresented, you're uneducated, and they're going to take advantage of that. It's a business, right? Like, I don't blame them, but that's
yeah,
exactly what they're doing. So educate yourself as much as you can and don't leave money on the table. Like you said it, you spent 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. I've got businesses that I've helped sell that are multi-generational, fourth generation, great grandfather started the business. Why
Yeah.
shouldn't you get the most that you can for that business? Like I see this stuff and I'm just like, holy cow. Here's the ultimate experience. When you sell a company, 2 years later, you want to look back and say, I have zero regrets. And today I don't. I knew
Mm,
exactly what I could have gotten. I could have gotten more. I had a timeline. I knew exactly what I wanted and they delivered on that. But I knew everything else that was possible because I educated myself. I asked the right questions. I worked with the right tax people. I worked with the right attorney. I worked with the right broker. And that's what I do today is I help people find those right people and educate themselves through the whole process. Whether you want to sell today or 5 years from now, start educating yourself now.
mm. Yeah, 100%. I think what you said there 100% is something that everyone should at least be aware of. Like, okay, if I'm a private equity group or a fund or even just an individual with money and I'm looking to buy a business, I'm not buying an HVAC business because I like HVAC businesses or like I collect businesses like their baseball cards. I'm buying it because I see an arbitrage that I can create as far as the value of that business. I'm going to buy it at $1 million and sell it in 2 or 3 years for 2 or 10 or 5 or whatever. I think because you're uneducated, you don't have a plan, you don't have the right people in place, your marketing systems suck or are outdated. If I buy your business for $1 million, I can take another $1 million, plug all of that stuff in, and then make it worth 5 or 10. And I will make 5 or 6 million on the sale in a couple of years. And it's because your business was set up and structured like that. So it's not that is the game, whether you're doing it with businesses or houses and real estate, it's the same thing. I believe that there's a difference in the value that I could get out of your thing with a couple add-ons that I know about that maybe you don't. And the less that you know about it, the more that I see as potential to put in place, capitalize on the other end of it, right? So
Yeah, you nailed
again,
it
it's
right
just
there,
like
man. You,
it's the lack of understanding that sometimes is the value in the business
Yeah,
itself. So
you nailed it. Somebody asked me at an event that I was speaking at. They asked me what are they looking for during the due diligence process. I said, what is the biggest thing that they're looking for? I said the
an
biggest thing
opportunity
that
to
they're
make
looking
money.
for is what you don't know,
Yeah.
and that's exactly it. It's because what you don't know, you're leaving money on the table.
Yeah. And that is the opportunity for them at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So 100%. Speaking of which, this is a great way to kind of segue. We talked a lot about your business and your
Yeah.
journey through building it and selling it. This is a perfect opportunity to kind of transition to like, what are you doing and helping people with right now, which is some of the stuff we've talked about, but, and maybe some more detail or specifics as far as like, what are people when they're calling, like, hey, Chuck, I need help with this. And what are you delivering on
Yeah.
the back end and who are those people?
Yeah, so I run a group through the Opus and Golds group. We have 3 tiers. We've got, startup companies that are in our groups all the way up to I'm working with a company doing $100 million a year right now and everywhere in between. We have 3 levels to our group, 3 tiers fits everybody, any budget, right? And what it is basically our lowest tier is you get 6 calls a month with us, right? It's group setting and you can come and you have access to me, text me with questions, stuff like that. And then it goes up from there all the way to our board of directors package where we're working with your teams. We're putting KPIs and scorecards in place. You're meeting individually with us twice a week or sometimes more, sometimes 5 days a week. Board of directors is just that. Like I'm bringing you a team of marketing, leadership, operation, tax strategy, all that stuff, right? So again, we have a fit for just about any business. Our sweet spot is if you're doing, between $2 and $10 million range, we're going to help you prepare for the way that you want to exit, whether you just want to run it as profitable as possible and pass it down to family, or just have this thing be a cash cow for you, right? Where you can take 152 days off a year.
Mm-hmm.
All the way to if you want to sell the business. I have a team of experts in place. Like we just went out to a company in Indiana and I brought the tax guy, the broker, myself, a financial person, and we're diving in and we're looking at all angles. We're going to give them an evaluation where they're at today. If that's something that they can live with right now, potentially we go to market with them. If it's not, and we got to clean some stuff up, so we're going to give them the strategy and their teams are going to put the things in place, right? So that's just some of the ways that we're working with people. We're very select. We don't work with just anybody. It's an interviewing process. So you book a strategy call with me, find out more of what we do. It'll be a lot more in depth than what I just explained here. And then we
Sure.
find out what your biggest pain points are for your business as an individual, right? We don't group businesses all in one, right? It's like what you're going through today is not what Joe's going through, right? So we got to figure out what you need versus what Joe needs, right? So that's some of the way. We're also doing events, man. I got a really cool event coming up May 5th through the 7th in Houston, Texas. It's right near the airport. We're finalizing all the details, but basically it's a 3-day workshop adventure event. And I'm like you, like, man, I just want to have fun. Like business is supposed to be fun. And I think, a lot of people are going away from that. Like they get so inundated with, I got to do this. I got to do that. I got to do this. Well, yeah, we want you to do those things, but we want you to have fun doing it. So we've created this business adventure workshops where I'm tired of the same old events where you sit in a room, someone gets up on stage, gives you 10 minutes of value, and then they try to sell you their program. That's not what
Mm.
we're doing. We have no vendors. We have nobody speaking that's selling anything. Like we're going in, we're doing workshop style. You as your business and your individual business, we're going around and formulating what you need today. And you're going to devise a plan of what you can do when you get home and bring back and go to work. We're also doing mindset exercises around it. Each night we're going to have different mindset exercises. So you feel energized. So you go home and you're just like, oh my gosh, like that's the missing piece, right? Like I want people to come to our events and leave a different person and leave a better business person, a better husband or mother, right? Better for their children, better for their partner. Like I don't want to just enhance their business. I want to enhance everybody. The last day of the event, you can either stay back and choose to do another workshop for your business, or you can go, we're doing a hog hunt. We did an event like this in January in Utah, and we had a snowmobiling event. We had people up on the mountain about 10,000 feet. We started a fire pit. We had lunch around the fire pit, and we talked about what we learned in the workshop in a different setting. And I'll tell you, there was huge takeaways there. And I'm excited for this one because I've never done a hog hunt. I wanted to do it from a helicopter. We're not going to do it
Yeah.
from a helicopter this time. That will probably be a VIP one down the road. But we're going to go out to this ranch, and they're going to set up the whole hunt for us. And we're going to go out and talk business and blow some shit up and have some fun, while doing it.
Yeah. Sounds like a great weekend for me, dude. Talk a little business and then, go raise hell with some hogs. I want to do the helicopter thing too. That sounds dope, man. That is on the bucket list for sure, but
Yep.
got to find the right time and right people to put together and do it.
Yep.
Sounds like a blast.
For sure.
That's what's up, man. Cool, dude. Is there anything else we didn't touch on that we should have?
No, I mean, look, if you want to reach out to me, follow me on Facebook, Chuck Staszkiewicz, DM me. I'm very good at getting back to people. Opusgolds.com, really easy. opusgolds.com. You can go on that website and you can book a strategy call. I don't charge anything for that. Come get to meet me, know exactly what I do, and see if I'm a fit, right? And we'll be interviewing you as well to see if you're a fit. But like, I love business. I love educating people. If there wasn't somebody looking out for me and teaching me these things along the way, I would have been in a way different spot than I am today.
Right on. We'll make sure that we get those links from you and we'll put them below the video. So if you guys want to get in touch with Chuck, you can drop down to the description and do so. Chuck, man, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
A lot of gems, a lot of good, valuable conversation there today. So I appreciate your time, man. Thank you so much. Cool. Right on.
Awesome.
See you guys. Thank you.